I never thought I'd be lying in a hospital bed, afraid of my own flesh and blood. But here I am, monitoring who enters my room, making sure the nurses know not to tell anyone I'm alive. The bruises on my body tell a story I can barely believe myself. My son, my only child, tried to kill me and his mother. It all started 3 months ago. Tyler had always been a good kid growing up in our modest home in Oregon. Athletic, smart, popular in school. My wife Diane and I were proud of him. Sure, there were bumps in the road. What family doesn't have them? But nothing prepared us for the change that came over him when he started dating Jessica. "Dad, she's amazing," he told me, eyes bright with that unmistakable look of young love. "Her family has this incredible summer house on the coast. You and Mum should see it sometime." I remember nodding, happy he'd found someone. Tyler was 26, working at a tech startup in Portland that was doing well. He'd moved back home temporarily while looking for a house, property prices being what they are these days. Diane and I were approaching retirement age, and having him around was nice, even if just for a while. The invitation came 2 weeks later, a weekend trip to Cannon Beach. Tyler had it all planned out, a hike along Ecola State Park trails, dinner at an upscale restaurant, and a bonfire on the beach. Jessica would be bringing her parents too. "A chance for both families to meet," Tyler said. "Sounds perfect." Diane had squeezed his shoulder. "We've been wanting to take a small vacation anyway. If only I'd paid more attention to the details. If only I'd noticed how Tyler kept checking our life insurance policy paperwork in my home office. If only I'd questioned why he suddenly became interested in our retirement accounts. The day of the hike was perfect. Clear blue skies, mild temperature, the Pacific Ocean stretching endlessly to the horizon. Jessica and her parents couldn't make it at the last minute. "Some emergency with her father," Tyler explained. "We should reschedule," I suggested. "No way, Dad. The weather's too perfect. We can still enjoy the hike, just the three of us, like old times." So there we were, climbing the trail along the cliffs at Ecola Point. Tyler took pictures of us, insisted on documenting everything. I remember thinking it was sweet, how he wanted to capture these family moments. Now I understand he was establishing an alibi, creating evidence of a happy family outing. We reached a spectacular viewpoint around midday. Below us, the waves crashed against jagged rocks. The drop had to be at least 60 feet. "Stand closer to the edge, Dad. I want to get the ocean in the background," Tyler said, holding up his phone. I moved closer, Diane next to me, both of us smiling. I felt his hands on my back, a gentle touch at first, then a hard, deliberate shove. The last thing I saw was the shock on Diane's face, as she lost her balance too. Tyler's outstretched arms no longer pretending to steady us, but ensuring we both went over. The fall seemed to last forever. I remember spinning, glimpsing the sky, the cliff face, the ocean below. When I hit, it was the rocks first, then water. Pain exploded through my body. Somehow the tide pulled me into a small cove, rocks shielding me from the worst of the waves. Through a haze of pain, I spotted Diane 20 feet away, motionless on a narrow strip of beach. I crawled to her, each movement agony. Blood trickled from a gash on her head, but she was breathing. When I touched her shoulder, she moaned. "Diane," I whispered, "don't move, don't make noise." Her eyes fluttered open, confusion giving way to pain, then memory. "Richard? Did Tyler?" "Yes," I said, my voice breaking. "He pushed us." "But why?" She began to sob, and I held her as best I could with what I later learned was a broken arm and 3 fractured ribs. "Listen to me," I told her, hearing footsteps on the rocks above. "He might come down to check. We need to play dead. If he thinks we survived, he'll finish the job." We lay still, my arm wrapped around my wife of 30 years, both of us hardly breathing as our son's voice echoed off the cliffs. "Dad? Mom?" He sounded concerned, the perfect, worried son whose parents had tragically slipped. I felt Diane tense beside me, maternal instinct fighting against self-preservation. I squeezed her hand, willing her to stay quiet. Tyler's voice came again, closer this time. "Dad? Can you hear me?" I kept my eyes closed, focusing on making my breathing shallow. Through my eyelids, I sensed a shadow fall across us. Our son was standing over us, watching, waiting for any sign of life. "I'm calling 911, he shouted, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear, establishing himself as the dutiful son. Then, in a whisper, meant only for our unhearing ears, "It should have been quicker. I'm sorry about that." The crunch of his boots retreated up the beach. Only when I was certain he was gone did I open my eyes. Diane was staring at me, tears streaming down her face. "Our baby," she whispered. "Our baby tried to kill us." We had maybe minutes before emergency services arrived, and with them, Tyler, who would ensure the job was finished if he knew we were alive. With pain shooting through every inch of my body, I pulled out my phone, miraculously still working despite everything. Instead of 911, I called the one person I knew would help us without question, my brother James, who lived just 30 minutes away in Seaside. "We need to disappear," I told Diane. "And then we need to find out why our son wants us dead." My brother James didn't ask questions when he found us huddled in that rocky cove, both barely conscious. He just helped us into his truck and drove straight to a small private clinic run by his old army buddy in Astoria, bypassing the local hospital where Tyler would certainly be waiting. "You're sure it was intentional?" James asked as the doctor treated our wounds. "Tyler's always been—" "He whispered to us," Diane interrupted, her voice hollow. "Thought we couldn't hear him. Said it should have been quicker." James's face hardened. He'd always been the suspicious one in the family, the one who saw angles others missed. "What do you need me to do?" "We need to disappear," I said, "just until we figure out what's happening." That's how we ended up at James's hunting cabin in the Coast Range Mountains, off the grid, no cell service, accessible only by a dirt road that turned to mud when it rained. The kind of place you go when you don't want to be found. For the first week, we focused on healing. My broken arm needed to be reset, and Diane's concussion required constant monitoring. James brought supplies and news. Tyler had reported us missing, organized search parties. He'd given tearful interviews to local news stations. "My parents were just admiring the view," he'd said, voice breaking perfectly on camera. "I turned to take a picture of the scenery, and when I looked back, they were gone. I'm praying they're alive out there somewhere." The Coast Guard recovered 2 bodies from the water 5 miles south 3 days after our accident. A middle-aged couple, tourists from Idaho, who had drowned in an unrelated incident. But in the confusion of the search, with multiple agencies involved, there was a brief period where authorities believed they might have found us. Tyler seemed disappointed when they realized their mistake, James told us, watching our reactions carefully. The officers said he was already discussing funeral arrangements. "We need to find out why," I said. "What changed in him?" James nodded. "I'll start with Jessica. This all began when she came into the picture, right? While we recovered in the cabin, James became our eyes and ears. He discovered that Jessica Whitmore came from money, old money. Her family owned real estate developments up and down the West Coast. Her father, Howard Whitmore, had a reputation for ruthlessness in business deals. "They're practically royalty in certain circles," James reported after following Tyler and Jessica to a charity gala in Portland. "But there's something off about them. The way people react to Howard, it's not just respect, it's fear." 2 weeks into our self-imposed exile, James brought a laptop with a secured connection. "I got into Tyler's email," he admitted, not explaining how. Some skills from his military days were better left unquestioned. What we found chilled me to the bone. Emails between Tyler and Jessica discussed a problem that needed solving before they could move forward with the next phase. My name and Diane's appeared several times. "Your parents are so old-fashioned," Jessica had written. "Daddy says people like that never understand the opportunities right in front of them." Another email from Jessica was more direct. "Howard says the properties can only transfer once they're gone. You know what needs to happen." I felt physically sick reading them. Diane had to step outside, her breath coming in gasps. "What properties?" James asked. "You guys own something valuable?" I shook my head, confused. We had our house in Portland, worth maybe $600,000 in today's market. Nothing that would justify murder. Later that night, while Diane finally slept, I told James about the life insurance. It's not much, 200,000 each. We got it years ago when Tyler was little. James frowned. That doesn't add up. The Whitmores wouldn't blink at that kind of money. He was right. We were missing something. The next day, James came back with property records. "Your grandfather's land in Tillamook County," he said, spreading maps across the table. "Did you know it's now bordered on 3 sides by Whitmore Development Properties? Grandfather Miller's land. 50 acres of forested hillside overlooking the coast that had been in my mother's family for generations. I remembered summers there as a child before the old cabin burned down. The land had sat unused for decades. I'd almost forgotten we still owned it. It's worth maybe 100,000, I said. Nowhere near. It's worth 50 million minimum, James cut in. The Whitmores are building a luxury resort community. Your land is the missing piece they need for ocean access. Without it, the whole project stalls. I stared at the documents, disbelieving. That can't be right. 3 developers have tried to contact you over the past year. Did you ever get their messages? I hadn't, but suddenly things clicked into place. Tyler had moved home 6 months ago, claiming it was temporary while house hunting. He'd insisted on helping with our bills, our mail, our phone calls. He'd set up a new router, claiming our internet needed an upgrade. He's been intercepting everything, Diane said when I told her what James had found. Filtering what we see. That night, I found a series of emails from Whitmore Development to my personal account. Emails I'd never seen because they'd been marked as read and archived before I ever opened my inbox. They'd started with fair offers to purchase the land, then moved to veiled threats about eminent domain. The most recent, dated 3 months ago, was from Howard Whitmore himself. "Richard, I don't appreciate being ignored. Every man has his price. Name yours before I'm forced to take other measures. This project will happen with or without your cooperation." That same week, Tyler had met Jessica at a company event. The timing wasn't coincidence. I looked at Diane, her face still bruised from our fall. "They're using our son to get my grandfather's land." "No," she said, her voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "They're not just using him. He's chosen this. He pushed us off that cliff himself." The truth of her words hung in the air between us. Our son had tried to kill us for money, for status, for acceptance into the Whitmore family. The boy we'd raised, taught to ride a bike, helped through college. He'd calculated our deaths as a fair exchange for wealth. "So what do we do now?" James asked. I looked at the property maps again, at the emails proving the conspiracy between Tyler, Jessica, and her father. Then I looked at the medical reports documenting our injuries. "Now," I said, feeling something harden inside me, "we haunt our son." The official search for Richard and Diane Miller was called off after 3 weeks. "Presumed dead" was the term the Coast Guard captain used in his final press statement. That same evening, Tyler and Jessica attended a private dinner with Howard Whitmore at his downtown Portland penthouse, celebrating with champagne. I know this because James had placed small recording devices throughout Tyler's apartment and car. We listened as our son discussed the timeline for claiming his inheritance. "We should wait at least a month before filing the death certificates," Tyler said. "Jessica thinks it would look suspicious if we rush." Howard Whitmore's voice came through clearly. "The probate process takes time anyway, but once it's done, the land transfers to you, then to us through Jessica after the wedding. Clean, untraceable." "And the life insurance?" Tyler asked. "Consider it a bonus," Howard replied, the ice cubes clinking in his glass. "A little over 400,000, wasn't it? Pocket change compared to what's coming." I turned off the recording, unable to listen to more. Beside me, Diane wiped tears from her eyes. "He sounds just like them now," she whispered. "How did we miss this? How did we not see what he was becoming?" I had no answer. The son in those recordings was unrecognizable, calculating, cold, discussing our deaths as casually as a business transaction. The weight of that betrayal felt heavier than all my physical injuries combined. But grief would have to wait. We had work to do. James helped us set everything up. He had connections from his military days, people who could create new identities, who understood how to stay hidden. We moved from his cabin to a small apartment in Seattle under assumed names. Close enough to monitor developments, far enough to stay safe. Our plan was simple but risky. We needed evidence that would stand up in court, proof of conspiracy to commit murder. And we needed to execute our plan before Tyler filed for those death certificates. The first phase began 3 days after the search was called off. Tyler received an anonymous envelope containing a single item, a thumb drive with photos of him at Ecola Point the day of our accident. Nothing incriminating, just pictures from a distance, as if taken by a hiker who had been on the trail that day. We watched through the hidden cameras as he panicked, called Jessica immediately. "Someone was there," he said, voice tight with fear. "Someone took pictures." "Calm down," she replied. "They're just pictures of you at a viewpoint. If they had seen anything important, the police would have been involved already." The next envelope arrived a week later, a printout of property valuations for the Tillamook land, with Howard Whitmore's email to me highlighted. This time, Tyler drove straight to the Whitmore estate. "Did you have to threaten them?" we heard him ask Howard. "If anyone connects this to their disappearance—" "Don't lose your nerve now," Howard snapped. "If someone had evidence, they'd have gone to the police already. This is just someone fishing, looking for a payout." Phase 2 began when Tyler filed the paperwork for our death certificates. The same day, every member of the Whitmore Development Board received an anonymous email detailing Howard's plan to acquire our land, including recordings of conversations discussing our accident. We made sure the evidence implicated Howard and Jessica, but kept Tyler's involvement vague, just enough to start the company scrambling. Within hours, Howard's lawyers were calling him. The board had convened an emergency meeting. Investors were getting nervous. "Who sent those emails?" Howard demanded when Tyler arrived at his office. "Was it your idea to record our conversations?" "Of course not," Tyler protested. "Someone's setting us up." Howard's voice dropped to a threatening whisper. "Fix this, whatever it costs. If I go down, you and Jessica get nothing." That night, Tyler returned to his apartment alone, visibly shaken. He poured himself a drink, then another. Around midnight, his phone rang. Jessica, hysterical. "Daddy's been served with a search warrant," she sobbed. "The FBI is looking into market manipulation and corporate espionage. Someone sent them everything." What Jessica couldn't know, was that we had indeed contacted the FBI, but not about corporate crimes. We'd given them evidence of conspiracy to commit murder. James had a friend in the Bureau who kept our survival confidential while building the case. As Tyler paced his apartment, drinking and panicking, I sent him one final message from an untraceable number. "The dead see everything. Confession is the only way out." At dawn, the FBI surrounded the Whitmore estate and Tyler's apartment simultaneously, but they found Tyler's apartment empty. Security footage would later show him leaving around 3 a.m., carrying a backpack and his passport. He was running. What he didn't know was that we were waiting. When Tyler arrived at a small private airfield outside Portland, where Howard kept his jet, he found me sitting in his car's passenger seat. The look on his face, I'll never forget it. Terror, disbelief, then a cold calculation, as he quickly tried to assess whether I was real or a ghost or a figment of his guilty conscience. "You're dead," he whispered. "Not quite," I replied. "Your mother survived too." His hand moved toward the glove compartment, but I was faster. I'd already found and removed the gun he kept there. "Why?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for weeks. "Was it just for money?" "You don't understand," Tyler said, his voice changing, becoming persuasive. "The Whitmores, their world, it's different. The things we could do with that kind of influence, the good we could—" "Stop lying," I cut him off. "You pushed us off a cliff, your own parents." For a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes, perhaps the last remnant of the boy we'd raised. Then it vanished, replaced by a cold stare I didn't recognize. "Howard said you'd never sell. That land was wasted on you. Do you know what $50 million could do for me? For Jessica and me. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. The FBI had tracked him to the airfield. They know everything, I told him. The recordings, the emails, the conspiracy. Howard and Jessica are already in custody. Tyler's face crumpled, not with remorse, I realized, but with the understanding that he'd lost. The money, the status, the future he'd tried to buy with our lives. When the agents surrounded the car, Tyler didn't resist. As they led him away, he looked back at me once. I would have made something of myself, he said, as if that explained everything. 3 months later, I sat in a courtroom watching my son plead guilty to attempted murder. Howard and Jessica Whitmore faced additional charges of conspiracy and corporate fraud. The Whitmore development empire was crumbling under federal investigation. Diane chose not to attend the sentencing. I can't see him in chains, she'd said that morning. Whatever he did, I carried him inside me for 9 months. I just can't. I understood. Some wounds never fully heal. We were alive, but the family we'd had was gone forever. As I left the courthouse, a reporter asked how it felt to see justice served. There's no justice here, I told her. Just consequences. That evening, Diane and I sat on the porch of a new house we'd bought in Vermont, as far from Oregon as we could get. The autumn leaves blazed red and gold in the fading light. Do you think we failed him somehow? Diane asked, her hand finding mine. I thought about it for a long time before answering. No, we gave him love, values, opportunity. Somewhere along the way he made choices, terrible choices. I still love him, she whispered. Is that wrong? No, I said, squeezing her hand. That's what makes us different from him. We can't stop loving, even when it hurts. As darkness fell, I thought about the land in Tillamook that had been worth killing for. We donated it to a conservation trust. No developments, no resorts, just protected wilderness forever. A memorial, not to what we'd lost, but to what we'd survived. Some days, the pain of betrayal still takes my breath away, but then I look at Diane. Remember how we played dead on that beach to stay alive, how we fought back when we were supposed to be gone, and I know that whatever else happens, we've already overcome the impossible. Our son pushed us off a cliff, but we refused to fall.